Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Richard Seer.
Here.
Christopher Wright.
Here.
Danielle Haggerty. Here. Ronald Murphy.
Here.
John Snyder absent. Steve Thomas.
Here.
Derek Wood absent.
At this point, could I have a motion to excuse John and Derek from the meeting? I second. Move the second. Next will be the public comments. Anybody's got anything they want to say that's not already on the agenda, please step up to the podium.
Craig Newell, 40 Stage Road. I dropped a packet off with all of you. There's a couple different documents in there from the Hermon School Department, from DNS. One has black and white, one is color. The colored one is the recommendations, if I remember correctly, and the black and white is the assessment. There's a couple things I just want to highlight in that document. Inside the assessment one on page 2, second paragraph, it says, while reviewing the firewall features, we did not find any security services enabled on incoming or outgoing connections. This includes intrusion prevention, detection, anti-malware scanning, antivirus scanning, or content filtering. So it's a lot, but what that really means is someone installed the firewall and literally didn't go in there and click the necessary things to enable those functions, which I find quite negligent for someone to install it and not actually finish configuring it. This report really sort of shows that there was no oversight of IT. No one was checking them. And this is not just the current superintendent, or the school committee, but the previous one, and the previous one before that, and the previous one before that. The only content filtering they do have is called Securely, and that was only put into place when I first arrived here in town and my kids got a computer, and I went to the IT director at the time, Jeff Wheeler, and said, why isn't there anything on here checking my kids' content? Like, this is ridiculous. And that got in place. Before that, I don't think they had anything. At the bottom of page 3, it says, at the present, teachers, administrative staff, and guest devices are not subject to website filtering. That means that the kids use the public Wi-Fi in the school, they can search anything they want, which is really scary. I would like to go to the document that, one, the report is, they shouldn't have paid $12,000 for it. It's not an assessment. It's not a audit. It is, I don't know what it is. I've never seen a document like that for any type of security audit, network scan, or anything. It doesn't meet any standard anywhere, whether private or government. The document that looks like cyber rubrics, it has a whole bunch of lots of tiny writing in it. So the National Institute of Standards and Technology, a part of the Department of the U.S. Department of Commerce, almost done. They created a standard to evaluate K through 12 schools. This rubric is something that takes that. I would have gave you that document, but super tiny, like 30 pages long. this rubric is what they should have gone off of for the assessment. They should use this and assess the school off of this. Having someone just look at it, I could have done that for a box of donuts. And my son could have too. He would like the donut rolls better. But like that assessment was a waste of $12,000. They should have most of that information should have already been known from the IT department. If you don't have any, there's one last thing I just want to mention. For E-rate, it says to get E-rate funds, the Internet Safety Policy adopted and enforced pursuant to 47 USC 254H must include technology protection measure that protects against Internet access by both adults and minors to visual depictions that have seen child pornography or with respect to use of computers by minors and harmful to minors. If they're not content filtering the adults or the staff, that means they're not meeting E-rate, and if they're not meeting E-rate, that means they shouldn't be getting the funds. Thank you.
Obviously, a couple questions.
Yep.
So you mentioned that to be eligible for E-rate funding, there should be content filtering. And then
Correct.
the statement here, the present teachers, administrative staff, and guest devices are not subject to website filtering. I guess it was my understanding that if or when the school switches over to the main school library network, that provides the filtering. And so with that, do you know where we stand with switching over?
I don't know. We did not have a technology subcommittee meeting this week. It is going to be on Monday. So hopefully we'll find out then that they've fixed the firewall and we're on the main library network. That should help alleviate all that. But again, I guess the way I see it is no one was checking the IT department. Whoever was supposed to check the IT department and ensure that the kids were safe. Because the biggest thing I have with all this is I want the kids safe. There's a lot of nasty things out there on the internet, and the kids aren't safe. I want the kids safe, but someone should be held accountable for this. This is unacceptable. If you read the report, it's absolutely atrocious. No one was checking the IT department. No one was verifying they had the firewall in place. No one was verifying that antivirus was on everything. No one was checking that content filtering was happening. Someone should be fired. A lot of people should be fired. And personally, I think the school should go after Jeff Wheeler, who was in charge of all this, and get some money back. Personally, I doubt that's a possibility, but I mean, this is really unacceptable. But sorry for long-winded.
Greg, you had mentioned securely, and you said, could you just say what that is again?
So Securely is a program that will monitor the kids' traffic going across their systems and ensure that content filtering and when they put inappropriate words into the search function, it stops it. If there's websites there are certain websites that are known bad websites, those are put into it and basically stops that function from happening. From my understanding, it's not on all the systems, and as you see from the report, it's not being done on the teacher systems or the staff. We know it's required.
You had mentioned that that was put in when you moved to Hermon. Do you know roughly when this was installed?
I brought it up in either the October or November of 2021 because my kids brought their systems home, and as being an IT person, I said, log in, son, let me look at this thing. And when I saw there was no antivirus, no content filtering, and that when he logged into my computer at home, my network at home, he could go anywhere on the internet. And I'm sorry, but I don't allow my kids to go anywhere on the internet. So I brought it up to Jeff Wheeler. He sort of did some wordsmithing, and then I brought it up to Mr. Chasson. Mr. Chasson told them to fix it, and they finally, I'm not sure when they finally installed it. My guess was either the end of 21 or the beginning of 22. Thank you all.
Anybody else? John Leonard, my neighbors, last month, or last meeting, Steve had spoke to, the nomination of Chris McLaughlin for vice chair. The timeline's kind of a little hazy. So I just wanted to clarify that. 11/8, he sent this email to the superintendent, who then sent it to, the Pines Church. The following month in December, that's when the school committee had their vote. And then in March of 23, the discrimination lawsuit was filed in federal court. So then in July is when we had the first school committee meeting after the election, and that's when they voted for chair, vice chair. The nominee actually was Jessica Keith who nominated Chris. It was seconded by Deb Wallace. There was some issues with that vote because they allowed Chris to attend during Zoom meetings, and that's against policy. And there's also some procedural issues with the vote. And that's all documented within the legal invoices. So the next month, they had to confirm that vote. It was August, we were at that meeting. I think you spoke to the track update, so I think that's where you remember this. And Stephanie motioned to confirm the vote for Chris. That was seconded by Jesse, and that's where we are today. So the school committee actually rewarded Chris twice after the lawsuit was filed. So that's from the clarify the notice of dates.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Move on to review the consent calendar and approve that. Need a motion?
Move to review consent calendar. I'll second.
Richard?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Danielle? Yes. Ron?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yep.
Thank you.
Workshop. Unless you want to start that. Affirmative, John?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council. I just wanted to discuss the ad hoc committee for the charter review that I mentioned last council meeting. I know I had said that I was planning to bring that back to make the appointment and approval at this meeting. But we have seen a large request to be on the committee. You know, and typically when we form these, we have to go solicit folks to be on these committees. So we've had a larger outreach than I was expecting. So I kind of wanted to bring it back in workshop form tonight and just discuss it with the council a little bit more, just to make sure we were clear on the process and how we wanted to form this and the members that we wanted to include on it. So I'm really kind of looking for some suggestions tonight and some guidance from the council on maybe how we want to go about this. Just because I don't want the council to be in a tough position of having to choose just a couple residents in town. I will say that these meetings are going to be public. They'll be for anybody that wants to come to offer comment or suggestion, things of that nature. So we had put it out online just to garner some interest for the positions, and that's when we found out just how many people were really interested. So I just want to make sure that we go about this the right way to make sure we're hearing everybody that wants to be involved in this and not leaving folks out.
Is there usually a number on a committee like that?
There's really been no set number because we will include members of the council, we'll have staff, equal representation from the school committee. You know, so after we discussed this last meeting, I think I realized that we need to give it a little bit more time to hash all that. And this committee is really to bring just recommendations to the council. And over the last 18 months, with the interim position that I took and then moving into the manager's role, we just kind of collectively run into some areas of the charter that need to be updated. So in my mind, how I saw this going was we would be taking the certain portions of the charter that we knew we needed to update. One, the town manager position, for the town manager section, the budget section in reference to the school validation, because there's inconsistencies with what the charter requires, what state law requires, and really with the goal to eliminate the second validation, if that, that's kind of how we started the conversation, if that was how we wanted to proceed, to allow just the one kind of validation happening prior, or maybe even concurrently with the vote of the budget if we actually have to. So we know of some certain areas, and I think with the timeline, we could talk, Mr. Burgess came up here and we talked about some inconsistencies with the agreement we have with the RSU and the school committee and how that's worded in the charter. So my thoughts are, as we form this committee, and I will reach out to Tim just to confirm this, but to keep the focus on those three items, or whatever items that the council feels is in need of review. I think if we take the charter in entirety and try to go down through, and that's not my intention or what I think we should do. I think we should identify the areas that we know we need to clean up and work on those. Just to ensure that it's going to be on the November ballot.
So it sounds like you're suggesting to limit the scope to Article 4, Town Manager, Article 6, School Committee, and Article 7, Article 8, Budget.
Yep.
So Josh, it's not, and so just for the clarification of that, and I'm sure you're gonna get some guidance from them, right, so it sounds like what we basically need a motion to, actually form the, charter review committee, and then from there, a second motion that would actually define the scope of the review. And so that would, we would run that by John and Frank. Okay.
Yeah, that was my thought, is we would, that the council would charge the ad hoc committee with specific sections to review, if permissible.
Okay. And then just for everyone's, understanding, what you mentioned is, the committee would make recommendations, they would come back to the council, and then the council could accept all, none, partial, some of those recommendations, and then whatever the council approves at that point goes out to, residents to vote.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's the council that would decide what changes, if any, and then the council could make additional changes too. But I felt in trying to, and I don't like to use the word transparency, but to ensure involvement and everybody is aware of what we're doing. That's one of the biggest things that we try to do, is just communication with the public, all ages, just to make sure people are aware of what we're doing. So I feel that's what this ad hoc committee would accomplish.
What do you feel about the, I guess, the number of people that expressed interest in serving on the committee?
I think we have 12-ish so far, right around there. There's been more interest in this than really any other committee we've ever formed. So, like I said, usually we have to go out and solicit.
So what are your thoughts on that number? Seems like a pretty large group, and it would almost be counterproductive.
That's right. I think in a situation like this, more definitely is not better. Especially when you work in a larger group setting. It
you mentioned, I think you had mentioned that you were interested in having a couple of council members and a couple of school board members, as well as some citizen involvement from the public as well. Did you have a specific number in mind for how large this committee should be?
Really, what I was thinking, initially I had thought 2 counselors, 2 school committee members, 2 residents, but with also having the town manager, superintendent, and a dedicated staff member from the town. What I hadn't considered was necessarily voting, and I think the superintendent, town manager, and the staff should probably abstain from any type of voting. So that left 6, and I think we need to have an odd number involved. So, you know,
So will the school committee representation be on areas that are specific to them, or will it include other areas that we're looking at that are not relevant necessarily to the school?
I mean, I was thinking they would be involved in the entire process. I think it's really just the manager, and really the manager, in my opinion, that's an easy, there's not a whole lot of discussion on that. It's just that our attorney is gonna say, hey, this is how it needs to be worded. And then the validation, I think, is another area where so this may involve a reserve request for some funding too, with our attorneys getting involved. But having the town's attorney and the school's attorney work through the validation portion of that. But I think the ad hoc committee being involved with what they're recommending, because I know they spent some time on it last year when we were looking to get the validation both either before or with the annual town meeting, and it just was not an easy thing to do. So that section will make our elections and our budget approvals easier, which the town had tried to do in the past and had done successfully. We just didn't keep up with approving that method. So this would.
So there's been tension, obviously, in the past between around the school. So I'm just going to ask directly: are they in favor, in supporting of cleaning up the issue with the validation vote?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, so this isn't something that we're trying to do and not think of their best interest.
Not at all.
We're trying
Not
to
at
make
all.
it better for them
Yep.
as well.
Yep, absolutely.
So Josh, as far as the numbers go, so you have 12 people that are interested. This is a pretty important document for the town, and I guess I was thinking we should probably have more than 3 residents besides the 2 council members and the 2 school committee members. I agree with having an even number. So, you know, if we decided to go with 2, 2, and then say 5, it's still quite a bit less than the amount of people that are interested. Do you have any suggestions on how we would select those 5 people?
I would think we would offer the opportunity for them to come and speak to the council. I know in the citizens involvement forums, you know, there are some lengthy explanations, their qualifications, reasons that they'd like to be interested in being on the committee. So I would think, and that's why I closed it on February 8th. I felt that gave enough time for people to reach out to us. And then we could potentially schedule that for the next council meeting on the 15th. It's kind of my thought, if agreeable. I think that'd be a good opportunity. It's great that people want to be involved in this. I always feel that the more input we get from the public, the better, because we may feel that you're covering all the bases. So the perspective from the residents is very helpful.
So I guess I'm just going to repeat part of the conversation. So it sounds like what we would do is first
I would think so, I mean, unless we needed to give it another meeting, but I think that's probably about as long as we can go before we need to really get cracking on it, just to make sure, so it'll be on the November election, but we need to have this all done by the 1st of June. And that's with as much wiggle room as Kristen will give.
And as far as 2 council members, are we limited to having only 2 on it for any reason, or?
Nope. Nope, I was just trying to, keep the council and the school committee representation the same. I didn't know how many people we wanted to have. I didn't know 3, but if we're open to having more.
So are you looking for an even number, or are you looking for an odd number of the voting body?
I was looking for an odd. Is that right? Is that what you had?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I think usually communities seems so it's always been 2 from council.
That's what I was asking.
So from the voting body, I think if we did 2 from council, 2 from the school committee, and 3, 4, 5 from the town, as far as voting bodies go, that would be an odd number. It would be small enough to still be a productive.
I would say 3 or 5. For work.
I guess one other thing is, I've served on a number of committees in the past, and the numbers always start strong in the beginning, and they trickle out, fade out, and so I would think we'd be better off starting with a higher number like 5, just at least 2 people.
I'm curious what, if I'm allowed to ask, I'm curious what the others think about limiting the scope to the 3 sections.
Did you say that what you thought needs to be worked on?
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea to limit it. Otherwise, I don't think we get any suggestions or a recommendation in time to make those deadlines.
Yeah, I agree.
Timelines, because just that working on everything, what are the timelines?
That's my concern.
Out of 11 sections, 3 is,
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, so if, and that gives you some direction, and we'll get things ready for the next council meeting.
And what do you expect the action steps to be at the next council meeting, just so the community knows ahead of the game?
Yeah, so I would think, well, that's a good question, Nathan, thank you. Do we feel like we wanna have, proposed, or, interested people, if they come and speak that night, do we feel like we wanna make that decision that night? Or do we wanna wait until, I believe our next meeting is gonna be the 28th or 29th?
Will you have the material to us before, will we have their applications before the meeting to look at?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll go with that. And we'll plan on the 15th. We'll have the resolve written up. I'll get with Tim to make sure we're good to go. As far as the ad hoc committee and limiting the scope. And we'll be prepared for that next meeting.
And when you come back next meeting, I don't need the answer now, but when you come back next meeting, can you also give us a timeline of all the steps so the committee knows
Yep.
when their work needs to be done by? We know when it's coming back to us, when we have to, I'm sure the first and the second reading, when it needs to be publicized, and if we could just have that whole timeline.
Yep.
Is that it on the record?
I just want to reiterate, all the meetings will be open to the public, and there'll be a public comment section during the meeting.
Correct. Yeah.
Can I suggest that we have public comments at the beginning and at the end, because we're gonna be working, I don't know how we're, but whoever's working in the committee things will come up and the audience will have insight that they didn't have when they arrived. That I would like, if I was sitting in the room, to hear from them at the end, based on what we had talked about as a group.
I can do that.
All right, we move on to the capital improvement plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council. I included in the packet just a draft financial resolve, which is very similar to what we approved last meeting. I did meet with Mr. Grant to discuss what CIP items he was looking to include, and I should have those shortly. I wasn't able to attend the Tuesday's budget meeting. But looking back through the most recent years of the resolves, the school, it looked like the school's CIP projects had been approved after the town's. Anyhow, so I wanted to get this out here for your review, just so you saw it. And I'm hoping to have those CIP plans from Mr. Grant to include in this. We had discussed a couple of them. One thing I did change a little bit is the funding of the reserves and where those funds are going to come from. We have some equipment that I feel we can sell to put into our reserves that will help offset raising the money through taxation by about $50,000. And as we go, if I feel we can increase that, then I'll bring that back to the council to lessen the amount we ask from the levy. So really just open to discussion tonight. Nothing has changed. I didn't include the entire CIP draft from the last two meetings, but all the same information. This is the resolve that once we get the final approval, which I'd like to do at our next council meeting on the 15th, it come back to this board. We have until the end of this month for charter to approve this. So really just including this tonight, just so you could place some eyes on it. And it wasn't, when we go for approval, it's not the first time we see it.
I meant to ask it, thank you. Hi, Mike, buddy. You're good today, thank you. I meant to ask this last time, and I had an oversight. The fire truck, under the fire reserve account, replacement of fire truck in 2029. It looks like the current plan, actually, let me rephrase this. How much do you anticipate the fire truck will cost in 2029?
We're projecting $1 million.
And it looks like we're about $300,000 off hitting that mark by 2029. Do you anticipate the restructuring of the reserves will allow you to adjust to put more in more aggressively?
I believe so.
Okay.
And as we get closer and we actually ask for some hard numbers, we can make adjustments. If that's how the town decides to go.
I really think it's important that we're not having any more debt. We've got two significant loans that we're paying for, and I think having the proper equipment is really important. And I just want to make sure that we hit the target on time. I'm gonna miss it.
Thank you for that.
And then the other piece of it is the school department's capital improvement plan. I know that there's been numerous changes in superintendents over the last few years. And I think it might be helpful to maybe have a discussion with Micah and maybe Stephanie to really I'd love to be included where I've been working on the budget stuff, but maybe Ron and yourself to have a conversation about the charter and what we're really looking for as far as a 5-year plan and how they, if they have a plan to get us to having the 5-year plan. Because like I said, I know there's been very little continuity, COVID was thrown in there. And it would be nice to resurrect the 5-year plan that gets updated every year, so 1 year falls off, 1 year comes on. So that we have a lot of capital needs at the school, and I just wanna make sure we hit the marks on time.
I can reach out to them and see about getting that set up.
You're gonna usually roll out like the next weekend.
We hadn't set a date yet, but, after the budget meeting, I was gonna follow up with him or wait to hear from him, to see what they discussed with CFP projects and go from there. I'll be following up with him, sure.
And I think there's some confusion between the CFP projects and the 5-year plan. And I think they're being used interchangeably, and that's what I think, one of the things we might be able to help clarify, because really the 5-year plan is a 5-year plan, kind of like, exactly like what you have here, where we're looking at where we need to go, what we need to do, when we're gonna do what, and how we're gonna get there.
One quick question for you. On the fire truck for 2029, is that a drop dead date when you have to purchase a new one, or if it's still in sufficient quality condition, and we don't have the money, can we postpone it a year or so? Hopefully inflation goes down by then.
Sure. No, this is just our internal projections.
Yeah.
With inflation included, so I hope you're right. The fire department takes great care of their equipment, so I can assure you that we'll get as much life out of them as possible. But I know this is the one piece that, in discussions with Chief Sullivan, that eventually we're gonna need to do something. It's not adding an additional truck, it's just replacing our holders.
John, when you order a truck, don't you have to order it a year or two in advance before you need it?
Probably 3 or 4 years in advance after the delay that we received on that one. Yeah, so. We're conscious of that, and we'll wanna make sure that we're ahead of it as much as possible, because you're right, we gotta plan for it.
I know we always like to see those trucks last 25 years, but I mean, the roads that we have here and the salt and stuff, it's, you know, the range, they just don't make it. And that's a problem we have with one of our other trucks, this brain that's an extra foot to go with that.
You had the sale of public works and fire equipment, for $50,000. I'm assuming that's equipment that we no longer need. Is that just an estimate number, or do you have prospective buyers lined up?
It's mostly estimate. We do have a prospective buyer on the fire truck that we bought last year. So we're working on that currently. But the other is just surplus equipment that we have, mostly public works stuff that we can sell.
Anything else on councils? Investment discussion. Have to adjust it some more.
So I made that decide to do all the stuff. So I wanted to discuss this with the council. Steve and I had talked a little while ago about potentially investing some of our reserve funds. So I just kind of wanted to discuss that with the council as a whole. We've been looking through our investment policy, and it does look, there was an updated one, 2015, that we're trying to locate, but we can't seem to find it. But it does seem as though the council has empowered the money down there is liquid too. We do have access to that. So if we did decide to go with some CDs, we would just need to know that we're gonna tie it up for whatever amount of time we decide.
So that rate of 4.5% on the money market funds, is that fixed for a certain period of time? Can that be adjusted next month?
That's a good question. I hadn't asked that part, but I can find out.
Yeah, 4.5% is a pretty good rate on a money market account. And in addition to that, I'm guessing, I'm hoping that those funds are additionally insured. And so the bank has to pay an extra, probably at least 15 basis points for that. So for money market rate, that's pretty good.
And they are insured.
Okay.
And they are liquid.
Yep.
So I guess, I would be interested in considering a few other options if we get 5.5 to 6% per year. Again, with money market, usually those aren't fixed for, any period of time, so.
Okay. So and maybe you and I can work on it together, and I'd be kind of interested to, what amount would be a good amount to invest to gain that extra percentage, what amount would be worth doing that, so.
Okay. So that's something that we can work on and present at the next council meeting?
Yep. Okay. Yep, we can work with, Michael Shannon, the finance director, just so I have an understanding of what he feels we can, what amount he'd be comfortable with not having liquid, down there.
And how long do you have for, is that a year? I guess it's our time is up for less.
Well, it's really when we need to actually use the funds. So, I think we have some funds actually for the fast track project. Those funds may not be required for quite some time, so those will be tied up for a longer period of time. We just talked about reserving for the fire truck. Those funds aren't going to be needed for a while, so it could be 9 months, it could be 2 years. But the rates are starting to go down.
That's all I really had on that.
Okay. Anybody got anything else on investments? I appreciate you letting us know about your options. The whole council should know everything that's going on like that. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I would not move money around, council members.
My only concern is that if we do have a fixed period of time, we have to keep it in something like the fire truck, and we can put it in there and have it available when we need to pay for it. But when we have emergency funds, that's the one we want to make sure it's really liquid.
And that, most of our reserves right now, especially solid waste, sewer, we could run into big issues anytime, just with the infrastructure we have in class. We just, not just for this council, but for future councils, we want to just make sure we're not handcuffing anybody, and just that we have enough to do what we want to do. And if we did need to go get that money for whatever reason, what's it gonna cost us?
And that's what I was just gonna say, some of the options that are available, not just CDs, some other options that are low risk, higher return than normal right now. It's not that we can't access it if we have an emergency, it's just what is the impact gonna be on accessing it during an emergency?
Yeah, we can work on it.
Well, Josh, as you've been doing all the talking, it looks like it's an energy status report.
This will be short and sweet. Just a reminder of the planned joint planning board and town council meeting, February 20th, 6:30.
What date?
February 20th, to review the solar ordinance. That's still good to go, and I'll send out an invite for everybody, so you put it on the calendars. And then was one of the first guys that reached out to me when I took on the interim role here. He was someone that I talked to regularly, and was just a big inspiration to all managers. It's a big loss for the town and big loss for the region. Condolences to the family. And also with Sergeant Decker, he was in an accident. That was for the past week. It just seems like this stuff is getting us left and right, but he's home resting. He had a trailer truck that was clipped his or rolled over into his SUV. They were lucky to make it out of there with the limited injuries that he had. He even called me that afternoon just to kind of let me know what was going on. So that just shows his dedication to the town and what he does. And he's very fortunate that he's okay. You know, he's certainly banged up, but we want to wish him a speedy recovery.
Move on to the final public items, if anybody thinks it's any want to bring up something else open.
How you doing? Frank Rapp, 531 Ring Road. Mr. Barry, I publicly apologize to you. I left you a nasty voicemail last Thursday. My mailbox got clipped by a fire truck and I was pissed, so I want to apologize to you publicly about that. A little bit about my background. I've been in IT for 18 years. I applied for the Hermon IT job and I didn't get passed along in round 2. Just want to throw that out there for you guys. Danielle, your plan about, the 5-year plan about the town council and the school, like getting back together and stuff, it would be nice, but you guys don't get along, so I don't know how it's gonna work. I mean, just by me seeing stuff and going to different meetings, it seems like the school kind of does their own thing, and they're kind of like, I don't know, it kind of feels like they have like their own rules and stuff like that, so like, I like your idea, but I just don't know how it's gonna work with the current regime that they have. That's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
You're not the only one to leave a message like that.
But that's what the positive.
Thank you. They always end well.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to council items. Danielle?
I have a couple updates. Also, Old Town lost a long-time police officer in their community, and I just want to send my condolences to them. It's a huge loss. She was a very active officer in the community that held many outreach roles in addition to patrolling and other items, so it's a big loss to their community. I want to give an update on the budget process. So we've had our second school committee budget committee meeting, and Ron joined us because John was out of town, and we talked about the revenue, where it stands at this point. It's early on, so not all the numbers are finalized yet, and I reiterated to them my expectation and goal is not only for the town to offer a budget that is flat to the taxpayers, but also that the school offer a budget that is flat to the taxpayers. And what they presented at that meeting was, I think, at the end, only 80,000 increase, right? I got that right? So they're pretty close to flat. In addition to that, we went over some capital projects and discussed them. And then this around. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's all right. Yeah. I think that's it. I love some of the work that Mega wants to do with some of the schools. Really needed. And, if I could just add one thing, I really saw a lot of continuity at that meeting, to your point. I think everybody really wants to try to get along. They want to try to do the right thing for the town, to try to save as much money as they can. So I really saw a lot of that. It's the first time I've seen that in a long time. So I appreciate their dedication to make sure it happens.
a note, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
So with the proposed, school budget, it's looking like it's gonna, in net ask is gonna be for about $80,000, above and beyond.
Not-
How much of the undesignated, funds are gonna be used for the budget this year, you know?
So right now they penciled in $1 million. I would say that we, to back up, the undesignated fund as of the end of last fiscal year was 3.1 million. So we need to get it down to below 9%, and that would bring it down to just under 2 million, so 1.8 million, I think, if I've got it right, on about a 19, I'm looking at Brian, because I know you, 1.6 million. So right now they have on there $1 million, and a large portion of that was designated towards one-time capital expenditures. Not all of it was designated to operating. The 80,000, sorry, was specifically what is on this draft version and was specific to the town, the ask of the town, not the overall budget. Because the EB 279 went up just under 300,000 a year or two. And the tuition number was penciled in flat, but I think it's gonna get updated to a higher number soon. So the actual overall budget is not flat. I don't wanna give that misconception. Does that answer your question? Okay. And then the next meeting it was talked about having it on February 12th, but I don't know a date or time has been officially set. And I would be curious if I would like feedback from council members as to what you want me to look at or talk about or dig into as I go to these meetings, because they're quick and frequent at this point, and I just want to make sure I'm prepared. So are you getting the information you want? And is there something you want me to go back and talk about or look at? Am I sending the right message? Are you guys wanting me to send the message to keep the taxpayers flat, the Hermon taxpayers
So I think we all do, but I'm concerned that it's gonna be flat or could, about flat this next year, but it's tapping into that, surplus. So it sounds like the overall budget is, and we did have, capital items in the last budget, so it sounds like the overall budget is still gonna go up about $1 million this year. And at some point, we're going off the cliff.
Okay, so to your point, right now the budget is slated according to, let me back up. Right now the expenditures are at about a $1.2 million increase, approximately. But that's at the early stages, and they're not even gone through the rest of the department, so I don't anticipate it to end there. To your point, I think what you and I are saying is the same thing. We want to make sure that we're looking at the largest portion of the pull forward is used, which is the undesignated fund money that's used for the upcoming year's pull forward. But that money is used towards one-time capital, like expenses, as opposed to ongoing operating. So am I hearing you right?
So, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any other thoughts on what I should be looking for, bringing back, and am I sending the right message?
I think it's something.
So I guess, just so I'm clear, you said that they were looking at a $1.2 million increase
No,
overall?
no, I'm saying that the current draft version is about a 1.2 million increase. I'm not saying that's where they're gonna end. It's just the current version. They've only gone through one department and really whittled it down.
Okay.
So I don't
Okay.
want people to get nervous yet.
Right.
Yeah.
They had mentioned tuition was going to be flat though, as far as, when you say tuition, do you mean enrollment or?
So they budgeted in tuition dollars in that meeting, and she penciled in a flat number. I believe based off information that Brian Walsh brought to the meeting that number is actually gonna go up. So the tuition dollars I believe when we see the next version, will go up.
Now, was that the tuition going up because of increased students coming in?
Yes,
Are they gonna have to hire more teachers for the increased student population?
that wasn't discussed as a need at this time. There are additional teachers put into the budget. It was not to address an increase in volume. It was more, and I don't even know if it's actually an increase. Some of it's been a change in positions. So somebody left and they decided to go a different direction with the teachers. So it's not necessarily adding teachers, but it's changing. And I think there were some other positions because of the middle school. I'm looking at you, yeah, I'm getting yeses. The middle school number of students needs some extra bodies.
The fifth grade, very, very
Thank
good.
you. It's good to have people helping you.
One of the things I'm concerned about is the bait and switch that happened last year's budget. Excuse me, where they had 3 teachers, well, people they had employed who were paid for by federal grants. And Mr. Grant did not tell the council that they had these extra teachers that were funded by the federal government. And then he drops them on us last year and says, we've got to pay for them now. And we have a couple of 3 people that are being federally funded right now. Next year, we're going to be surprised that we're going to have to pay for them too. Or them grow.
And I do know that we have people that are making a transition from the first meeting. I know there are people that are making a transition from grant funding to local funding, if they should stay. And he did start that discussion early on, that they existed.
Okay. I'm tending, I'm moving forward.
I mean, just, you know.
I just don't like the idea of the government paying for positions all of a sudden. You go to that, we have it.
And if that is a common concern around the table, we may be able to do something different with our warrant article, because we actually have a warrant article that explicitly allows the school to do this without any disclosures. So there may be the opportunity to adjust the warrant article to have, when this happens, have disclosure that a position's being funded with them.
I would appreciate that.
May I ask you a question? Mr. Murphy, may I ask a question?
Sure.
One of my concerns is when you're taking money from the end of the undesignated fund, or we're budgeting, say, for a $255,000 field rate, and then the project doesn't get done, and the money goes back into this undesignated fund and keeps building. My concern is that we keep putting these big CIP projects or projects into the budget, and they're funded, and then they're not being completed. And I don't know how that looks, if that's just a total school board follow through, or what that looks like with warrant articles. I'm not familiar with the law that way, but I don't want to keep seeing the town fund projects that aren't getting done, such as the fuel tanks or the science lab, which was just cut, which needs to be done. So I support those projects, and I just don't know what's going to follow through. I don't see that happening. So when I hear these projects, people are funding them, what's the follow through, or what does it look like when it's not? Why do we keep putting this large amount of money and not using it? And the kids are suffering in the staff. So I don't know. Do you mind?
So I've had the ongoing concern that and I expressed this at the last meeting, so this isn't something that I didn't express. I have an ongoing concern that we have a 4-year, and I also discussed it here publicly with the auditor, that we have, let me finish my sentence this time, right? We have a 4-year trend of us not spending what we say we're gonna spend on the pull forward. And if we were under the 9% threshold, or in the very near future, the 5% threshold, that wouldn't be an issue. That would be okay, because it would just be, we would still be in compliance with the state. But we have a 4-year pattern of not spending the full forward and then putting it back in and not spending it to an amount. The problem is we are not going below the percentage point. At some point, the state can stand up and say, you're not treating your taxpayers right, and we're gonna stop giving you some money, and we're gonna force your hand to use this money. Nobody wants that to happen. I know nobody does. So I share that similar concern of we're putting stuff into the budget and we're not hitting the 9% threshold. And on the other side of that is we're putting projects in the budget that need to get done and they're not getting done for one reason or another. I did not hear, and maybe I heard it wrong, Brian, so maybe Ron are here as well. I did not hear that the science labs were not going to be done. I heard that the engineering for the science labs were going to be done this year, and that the construction would then verbally, that's where the written plan is needed, but verbally that the science labs would then be done in the following summer. Maybe I missed something, but that was my takeaway with regards to the science lab, and I've been.
I think that was I don't believe the timeline was the completion date was discussed, that the money would be put into it, and then based on the outcome of how much the project is going to be, was going to dictate the timeline. But they've started the design portion of it.
Right, so
Sorry,
next year it was next year they're funding the engineering for the project, both projects.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying.
So it's not just the undesignated concern, but I'm saying the actual budget. So there's some projects they're looking at the undesignated, and then there are projects that they just want to fund through the budget. And so if we're doing that, great. I want to make sure that they're actually getting done for staff and students. And I don't know what that looks like when, I just feel like that's a pattern, and I don't know what we can do to make sure that this gets done. We're not just funding any money, and it keeps growing. So, does that make sense?
Are you somewhat?
So like, if
Are you,
okay,
what is your concern of projects not getting done, or are you concerned something about the fund? I want to make sure I answer the right question. Can you reiterate your specific concern?
So if a project is in the actual budget, not being funded through the undesignated, that's actually in the budget for the taxpayers to be part of funding. The project doesn't get done, the money gets dumped into the undesignated. So it's like we're funding money, we're not spending, and the projects aren't getting done, and therefore it affects the staff and students.
So at this point, my understanding, and I've been pretty up to my elbows in it, my understanding is the capital project dollar amount has never exceeded the pull forward amount. So therefore, we wouldn't be burdening the tax. I don't want people to misconstrue this. We're not burdening the taxpayer for these projects and not getting them done. So if our capital projects were more than we were using for a pull forward, then that would be exactly what we were doing. In this case, my recollection, and you're nodding yes, is that the capital project total, and I can look to Steve too, because you've been involved with that, the capital project dollar amount is less than the pull forward. So we're not burdening the taxpayers more. You're right, the projects need to get done, right? And you're right, we need to spend down.
Yeah, that's the thing. We keep moving the money back and forth, supposedly, but nothing ever gets accomplished. And that's my concern, is I keep hearing these big numbers come forward. Let's talk about IT. That's a huge project that needs to get funded. Why isn't that even being discussed in the finance meetings that you both are sitting at, and Mr. Viano? It's not being discussed at what does the number look like, what are we going to do, where's the money coming from? If we have undesignated funds, why isn't that being discussed? I believe it's being discussed with some people, but not everybody.
So it hasn't been discussed with me, but I can share with you, we didn't go over anything related to technology. We only went over.
Yeah, we're there, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't discussed, it's a huge issue. I wasn't sure why in finance it wasn't discussed.
Okay, so again, on the agenda for that time, just so the public can hear it, that wasn't there. The only two items that were discussed were revenue and facilities, so I anticipate it would be at a future meeting. topics, because we didn't talk about staffing either, we didn't talk about athletics, we didn't talk about anything but facilities and revenue, so I anticipate it'll be the future meeting. And it's a major concern of mine. And it's it's a big part of why I'm driving it home, we need a 5-year plan. Between this, the legal matters we have going on, and the major facility needs we have, we as a community really need to understand what does our next 5 years look like so we can prepare for it.
Richard, anything? Yes, I do. I want to express my gratitude for the heartfelt sympathy I've received from the council and community. It means a lot. Thank you. That's it. Steve?
I guess I'd just like to follow up on something that came up at the last council meeting. We had the town's auditor, Peter Hall, address a number of things regarding the upcoming audit. And I was under the impression that the audit was going to be done by the first meeting in January, and he confirmed that it hasn't even started yet. And so, one, I am concerned about that. I don't know if you've got any updates there, Josh.
We have been actively working with Peter in that discussion, and I didn't do a good job of explaining the timeline as to when that will be completed. But we are, it'll be done much sooner than last year. I believe last year we actually had prepared in April, maybe it was May, but we will have it at least at that time this year. So I can work on getting exact date. We've been working on our financials. The school sounds like they're in better shape than I realized. I didn't check in with them previous to the last meeting, and I should have, but it sounds like they're ahead of the game this year. So I think we're in good shape. But I can see if I can get a exact date to it.
And some of that last one was my fault, thinking, right, I said that we were still, and we got everything done, but I did touch with Mike, and he was sure that Hank has got everything done on their end, and so that's going to the auditor. I don't know if we got any more on these needs to be done.
We're working on some reconciliations, like I mentioned last meeting. We're in good shape.
And just to clarify, he hasn't started because we haven't signed the letter of engagement. So it's not that he's not starting, we didn't agree to start.
Correct. We delayed the process we went through, delayed him a little bit. I thought we were aware of that. The RFP did say January 1st, no doubt about it. But that was my fault for not communicating that clearly.
We don't need the okay for November.
I can't remember now, somebody right around there.
I guess the other follow-up is, he tried to call me out on my concern about the hiring process, and I wasn't expecting him to present the way he did. I do have concerns that he still refuses to feel that he should amend the last audit. There is, he gave the school a clean compliance audit opinion, and despite the fact that the school is being audited by USAC, a division of the FCC, and I've actually talked to 4 CPAs, told them about the situation, and they would have elected to include something in the notes about that investigation. And, he didn't feel that it was necessary. I thought Danielle had a great follow-up question when she asked about the amount of funds that are being investigated. The school has received about $800,000 in E-rate funds going back 20 years, and we don't know where that's going to fall. If USAC determines that those funds were used inappropriately, the town and the school could possibly have to repay those funds. And I honestly, I don't understand how an auditor could feel that that is not warranted to be included in the audit or the notes. So, I don't know, I still have concerns about the process, and I know it was also mentioned about possibly going out to bid earlier in the next month or so. And I'm just wondering if we should be putting that on the agenda. And Chris, you had some questions about that too. And then, Danielle's working with the school on the overall budget on the finance committee. It was also mentioned in the previous council meeting that based on what's going on with the IT department, we have spent millions of dollars on that network over years and years. And I personally feel quite uncomfortable supporting the budget this year without a clear plan on how to fix what is in place in the Hermon IT department. It's been so wasteful how they've used taxpayer dollars there, going back well over a decade. And I don't feel like I can sign a budget, related to the school this year without a plan in place to fix what is going on there. So,
I'll bring that back to the committee. Steve, that concern, I share a concern of not having the plan and the dollar amounts that we're talking about, and I'm trying to toe the line on that. And I understand it might be difficult, but I'm up for it. Do you feel, Steve, that we should put forward a volunteer, I have to pull up my notes from the last time, a voluntary disclosure, because he gave us that option as well. Would you feel better if we added that to the audit?
volunteer disclosure.
He said we could add a voluntary disclosure about the USAC investigation.
Down to add that in. Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense.
So I just wanted to kind of reiterate Mr. Thomas's concerns regarding the IT stuff. I think we're all on the same page there. There's a lot of unknowns, and how much is this really going to cost overall on the taxpayers themselves when it comes to fixing this network and all of the issues that we're having with it. So it's a discussion that needs to be out in the open, right up front, and I don't think it can be pushed aside any longer. So I think we need to make that clear that it's on the top of our priority list. I also wanted to reiterate, my thoughts and prayers with Mr. Howell's family. I know that was a pretty tragic incident for everybody that was involved, so I wanted to send my condolences out to his wife and his young boy. The other thing, Sergeant Decker obviously works right here in Hermon. Very scary incident. It was an 18-wheeler that was carrying recycled cars, crushed cars. So very heavy load, and that's he's very, very lucky to come away with minor injuries. So the other thing is in regards to the mailboxes, it's a topic I was going to bring up tonight anyway. I mentioned it in a meeting prior that there was a mailbox reimbursement program in some other towns. I know of 2 towns that have this in place, so they can just reimburse, no hassle to the taxpayer for their mailbox that gets crushed by a snowplow. So it's something that I think I'll investigate a little further and see how that's structured in their towns, and it might be a possibility to put aside some sort of small account to cover the mailboxes that get smushed repeatedly year after year. I might have been behind a snowplow one of the other storms we had, and I saw it hit like 3 of them just go ding, ding, ding right down the road. So it does happen. Nope, not So it's just one of those things I think could use a little investigation. I mean, if you're talking $50 a mailbox, hypothetically 100 mailboxes a year, that's $5,000, and it doesn't seem like a whole lot to make the citizens who have this happen year after year, feel a little bit of comfort with the town, what's not done. So, there was another accident on Route 2 and Annis Road at that intersection, so I'm also going to reach out to DOT. My specific concern, not necessarily just with the intersection and how it's set up right now, but also the lighting. If anyone's driven through there coming down into the village late at night, it's really hard to see. And if you add a little bit of fog to that, you can't see it all. So it's one of those things. I want to talk to DOT and get their thoughts on things. I know they've been reached out to in the past, but it's something I want to discuss with them. Animal control is another issue. And I'm sorry, I feel like I'm bringing everything up tonight, but animal control is an issue. I know we have a very large number of unregistered dogs in the town right now. So it's important that people go out and get their dogs registered if they haven't already. I think the 31st was the deadline, January 31st. So I know it's only been a day, but it's important to reiterate that. I think the list is about 4 pages long right now of unregistered dogs. I also want to maybe put a workshop about animal control into the next meeting, if possible, or a future meeting. I say this because there's certain dogs that continually are getting out of control. If you remember correctly, our animal control officer, Mr. Stubbs, had brought in a very beautiful dog named Zeus that had just came back and was found missing in action just a few days ago again. So I want to discuss possible fines and penalties for these people who are repeat offenders because it seems like it's an ongoing issue. So it's something to discuss. And I think the only other thing I had was the RFP for a municipal auditor. We had discussed this last year. We had an entire one drawn out. At the last meeting, Peter Hall said, that he was looking to wind down some of his accounts and stuff. So I think it's an opportune time where it's early in the year to send out a new RFP. I'd like to see if I can get that on as an agenda item for next month or relatively soon. Just to discuss the RFP, see if it's possible just to use the same language we did last year, possibly just change the dates on it for simplicity, and get that mailed out as soon as possible. So I'd like to see that as an agenda item if possible next meeting. Other than that,
And my condolences to the town of Hermon as well. Josh, have you had a chance to reach out to the regulations to offer any assistance to them?
Not directly, but I've been in the loop with other towns and managers and well aware of the assistance they're getting. So when we do get an opportunity to help, we will.
And I'm glad to hear that Gary's role